everybody. So we are so excited. We are here to talk about our latest obscure animation film. And we're here to talk about a movie called Rocks in My Pockets. And Stanford is here with me to talk about this very unusual film.
Great to be here. Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you. I think I should state out right, like this film is not for everybody, for sure. And I think I kind of forgotten how like blunt it was until it's one thing to like to appreciate on myself, but then I'm recommending it to another person, and then I watched it and I was like, oh no, what if he's like super offended by this, because it is very frank, it is very blunt, and some people will be very uncomfortable with this movie.
Yeah, definitely. I think that was a good warning. I appreciated the warning that you gave me. I really liked the film, and I'm excited that we can talk about it. But I think that's really smart to make people aware going into it that this is a really personal movie and really could make someone very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So So if you're gonna watch it with, I guess, a certain degree of caution. Know what you're getting into a little bit.
Yeah. And again, it's one of those. Even though it's animation, it's an adult. It's for grown-ups. This is a film for grown-ups.
For sure. Yeah. So, and I assume it's R-rated. I think.
I would assume so too. If it had a rating, I should check if there actually was a rating on it. But
yeah, there might not have been, but it's definitely R-rated material.
Yes.
But with those cautions aside, so you liked the film?
I thought it was a fascinating film. I love animation. Hello, that's why we're always talking. But you're so kind to invite me on your podcast to talk about it. It was very. I thought she had such an inventive use of animation with both, which and I know we'll talk about, but the style that she was using, both the kind of 2D hand drawn and paper mache sets that she was using, and but I just love seeing something that was so raw and so personal. I don't think I've really seen any animated feature quite like it. Possibly an animated short, which I know she's done some shorts too. I'm not sure if I had seen any of her shorts, any of her short films that she had done, but I found it to be fascinating. Yeah, really, really, and in a way, I don't quite riveting, in that it was just so revelatory what she was talking about with her own experience, and not that I could necessarily relate to everything, but it really opened, both her narration and her artistry really opened my eyes to an interesting way of viewing depression.
Yeah. Definitely. I think so. I think she does a lot of really great things. I agree with you about the animation is so inventive and surprising, shocking, all those things put together. But also, I think that she captures anxiety and some of those feelings like so well, in a sense of just like panic. And I maybe the best I've ever seen in art.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yes, and I totally agree.
Yeah, and just that feeling of like you have this thing happening to you that you can't explain and that you want to control, but you can't control. And I just love her like very untidy ending, and we'll talk more about that. But I don't know. I just really, really appreciated how honest it was, and. So let's start kind of explaining basically what she's trying to do here. So she's trying to work through her mental illness, trying to understand it better by looking at the history of her family.
Yeah.
Which is a beautiful idea. And something that we probably all should do.
Yeah.
And so she's originally from Latvia, and And so she goes back to her grandmother, and who had 8 children, and kind of goes through her grandmother's love story, and how the reason why that has the name that it has is that the grandmother tried to drown herself with putting rocks in her pockets in the river so that she would drown. And so that sort of starts off this history of kind of mental illness and suicide in her family. What did you think about the grandma's story?
Well,
Anna.
I thought it was fascinating, and again, the style that this is done in is so frank. She I love how she's very consistent with how she animates each of those characters, even though they all have a very they have a similar. You can tell it's all done by the same artist, right? But I just love how consistently they look. They're in the same clothes, pretty much. Every time they're in a scene.
Yeah.
But, so I love how she drew the grandma, number one, but then also just the story was so compelling. I mean, here's this woman with 8 children, and it talks about her youth too, and again, just a fascinating way to start looking at your family history, one's family history, particularly her own. Anyway, I liked it. What did you think?
No, I agree. I mean, I think it's really interesting because you have this woman who, she stood up to Nazis, stood up to the Soviets, stood up,
brave,
a pillar of strength, and yet she was so troubled inside.
Yes.
And she couldn't be a pillar of strength with her, or I mean, I'm sure she was as much as she could be, but it's just an interesting dynamic that she has going on, this thing inside her that was a mess. And and it's kind of interesting too to see Signe trying to get information about this, some of the family shame, and I think that was part of the reason why she did the movie, is to just try to kind of understand to understand these things so that she can understand herself. And when I interviewed her, I got to interview Signe for rotoscopers.com, and
which is so cool. I'm so glad. That's amazing you got to do that.
It was really, really cool, because
it was a great interview. You did a wonderful job.
Thank you. Well, she has a new project that was a Kickstarter at the time. I'm actually part of that Kickstarter because I just think she's cool. And anyway, I interviewed her and I asked her, I said, well, what was it like working on this project, on Rocks in My Pockets, and what did it teach you? And, different things that she learned, and sticking to a project. And then I asked her, said, is it difficult to be so personal in your films? Rocks in My Pockets was very personal for your entire family. Was that hard for them? And she says, when I write a story script, I write it as if I were telling it to a trusted friend. I feel vulnerable, but I'm not afraid to open the dark corners of my life and psyche. I believe people will not kill or mock me for being honest and opening up. And then she says, but telling the secrets of my family is a different thing. I feel I betrayed my family. They didn't ask their lives and deepest secrets to be thrust onto the film. It was definitely not easy for them to accept the film. I admire them for coming to terms with it and accepting the film and forgiving me for making it.
And forgiving her, for making it. I thought that was a really good line. And back to the grandma, I wondered how the grandma would have felt, about her story being, I guess just the truth, kind of the full truth being told about her, because she really was, I thought, a remarkable woman in her own right,
Right.
But with some really hard things she had to deal with, and I thought it was really brave of Signe, the filmmaker, to talk about it so clearly, so clearly, and so openly.
Yeah, I mean, it's really a tough thing. I think that if I were to ever write even a fictional book, it would be very hard because I think there would, you draw from your life at least a little bit, or if I were to make a movie or whatever, there probably would be people I'd be like, I'm sorry.
I know.
I'm sorry,
Right?
but doing something so
Exactly.
personal like is this,
Yeah.
this is one of the most personal movies I think I've ever seen.
Oh, me too. Me too. Hands down. Because
Yeah.
again, it's not. It's true. I mean, this is a true recollection of
Mm-hmm.
a true history of this filmmaker's family,
Yeah. But
and it.
it's weird because in a way it like shouldn't be. Like, I think this is really important because there is such a stigma with mental illness, and that I don't know. I'm grateful for people like her that are talking about it
Yes,
and
definitely.
being honest about it and taking that huge risk that she took. And she is very, very, very blunt. She won't be for everybody. She talks
Right.
about what happens when you commit suicide and you hang yourself, and you know, there's stuff that a lot of people will struggle with.
Hmm.
But I don't know. I really some people might think that she's too honest. I thought it was really refreshing.
I liked it too, and I really liked that she was the narrator. That she didn't
Mm-hmm.
hire an actor or somebody to do it. Not that her voice is necessarily the most pleasant to listen to, or it's not like her
Yeah.
phrasing or anything. I mean, it's not like she's some wonderful orator or actor or anything, but I think it adds to just the veracity of
Yeah.
the project that it's her speaking, and she's talking. She talks. I mean, you sense some emotion in her voice, but it also is just very matter of fact. And
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering if some of that was cultural. Again, because she's a native Latvian, and English is not, is her second language, or not her native tongue. I've wondered if that was part of what was your take on her narration,
That is
and
one
how.
thing I'm not 100% sold on.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I feel like it was a little robotic.
Yeah, and that's
Um,
exactly. I mean, it really comes almost monotone,
yeah,
yeah,
because
in
it's not
nature.
her, English isn't her primary language.
Yeah.
And so I might not have made that choice, but I understand it and I don't hate it, but it's probably my thing I struggle with the most in watching the movie
Hmm.
is just her narration. But it's not a deal breaker for me for sure. So yeah, so we get this story of Anna, and I mean, there's just some really powerful scenes, like when she sees the bunnies, this bunny eating the children of eating her children, and she has this like bizarre sort of fantasy, and you're just like, whoa,
Yeah. Like heavy.
I guess, yeah,
This is
and,
heavy.
yeah, and there's lots of really just like cool visual sequences. In order to create this visual style for the film, they combined 2D and 3D animation. 28 sets were constructed using plywood, cardboard boxes, and paper mache, which were then painted to resemble rooms, forests, and city streets. The sets were then photographed with a digital camera as either still pictures or in sequences to create a stop motion effect. And so what did you think about this animation?
Oh, I loved it.
Yeah.
I in fact, for a while I was wondering, like, is that paper mache? Just like, what is that?
Yeah.
Or was it CG? And I didn't know until after the fact. After then I watched it and then I did some additional research and read your interview. Uh, I thought that the animation style was incredibly original and really uh, it had a very unique level of artistry that you just don't see a lot. Very hand drawn. It also was reminiscent to me of Bill Plimpton's work, and it was
Yeah.
interesting to find out that Signe worked for his studio for a while, and then they're friends, and then that they're in contact with each other regularly, and I thought that showed.
Yeah.
It did. What did you think about it?
Yeah. We'll definitely be doing Bill Plimpton coming up in for
Yes,
animation for sure. Uh,
absolutely.
I love his movie Cheatin'. I think it's really good. And he's similar to Signe as far as just being really honest and just really bold and kind of similar style. But I don't know, I liked how she just made it her own with this unique combination of this 2D and 3D, the stop motion kind of look to it. It was really cool, and I just felt like it managed to capture sort of the that anxiety so well.
Yes.
There's scenes where it's on sort of a conveyor belt and everything's all getting kind of sucked into this giant mouth, and you kind of see, and I think that captures it really well, like where different characters are like in bottles, and you feel like, and I thought that was really effective. Yeah. And I don't know, were there any sequences that particularly that you remember?
Well, speaking to this point, Rachel, I liked her use of recurring creatures as like the depression.
Yeah.
I would think that's how I interpret it. There's that one creature that almost looks, I mean, it's like an anthropomorphic cat, kind of. I don't know. I mean, it's like a combination of different things, but it's got the little round ears
right
at the top or whatever. I liked those recurring images because then you knew what was happening, because this would show up with different people, or in different scenes. So the one of the images that really stays with me and I could be wrong, but it was almost like one of the scenes was like a paper mache brain.
Oh yeah.
You know which one I mean?
Yeah, and then it's getting chopped into 4.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love the colors. I love the imagery, and I thought again it was inventive, but also so effective in what it was trying to convey. And as you had already mentioned, that artistry that she uses really is such an interesting way of bringing, expressing herself, through this, and helping, I think, the viewer understand it, or at least feel it,
Yeah, I think so. And she ends up talking about 3 of her cousins.
Yeah. And
I just felt, especially these parts with the cousins, I just felt like she had such a love for these women, like, and it was so tragic, so heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And I'm really, are you close? Would you say you're close to your cousins?
Yeah, I have some cousins that I'm quite close to. Yeah, absolutely. Not necessarily all of them, but some of them for sure.
Yeah, like some more than others for me as well.
Yeah.
On one side of my family, I'm a lot older than the rest of my cousins, and then on the other side of my family, we're all kind of around the same age. And and I don't know, I related to kind of her. I've had 2 of my cousins have passed away from complications with drugs and addiction and things like that, and sort of watching that. And and I have had another cousin that passed away just from a health issue. And so I don't know, I felt like I bonded with her over that.
Absolutely.
And
it's hard.
like I said, I loved, and it was heartbreaking, the cousin that, because what ends up happening is they end up, pretty much all of the cousins, I think, all end up in the sanitarium, basically, in Latvia, including Signe. And I don't know, on one hand, it's like this release for them. Right. On the other hand, it's like this prison.
It's a prison. Yeah. Yeah.
But she's kind of relieved to go there in a way. It's an interesting dynamic.
Yes. And how she expresses that too is really something.
And her one cousin, you see her trying to like love her husband so much, and she ends up just in this bottle with pills coming down because she can't. I don't know. It's a really beautiful, like, and tragic image that you see. I think that was one of my most impactful of the whole movie.
Yes. No, I agree with you. And yeah, that showering of the pills.
Yeah.
Is that's really this
not
vivid,
that there's anything wrong with getting medication, but I think what they're trying to say is that, like, they weren't like dealing with it. They were just like covering it up.
Yeah, it was just like they were almost just becoming numb by it rather than getting healed,
Yeah.
or yeah, functioning better.
Because even the doctor is like basically hooked on pills.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It was just like, yeah, exactly. Just
let's just get them on pills and let's just hide them away so we don't have to deal with
mhm,
them. We don't have
mhm,
to see them,
mhm.
and which is just ridiculous. And I loved her the whole section about her having a baby because
Oh, I did
I
too.
yeah, right? It was so good because she's just like talks about just this incredible ecstasy and this incredible feeling. And but then it doesn't, even though she is just so in love and it's just this amazing experience, it still doesn't solve the problem, which I thought
Hmm.
was really like emotionally true.
Hmm.
That was one
Yeah.
of my favorite parts.
And again, incredible frankness,
Yeah.
on her part that I would think that probably any mother, or could relate firsthand to that, and anybody who's conscious of how that whole thing
Hmm.
could possibly go, it's very
Yeah.
affecting.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
It kind of reminds me of one of my cousins actually. She was able to have she had a horrible time being able to have children. Had all these miscarriages, just a really tough time, and she ended up having twins via surrogate by gestational carriers they call it. Anyway, and I was talking to her once, and I said, is it hard for you to have a bad day? Because here you've got this like incredible blessings and it's what you wanted all this time, but like you still have bad days, like you still have.
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah, I totally relate to that. And I think that obviously this is a more extreme example of an actual mental health crisis that she has. But I don't know, I think that I could really relate to her. It's just like you get this like huge ecstasy of this incredible thing, because from the outside you could look at somebody that say has postpartum or has these
Right.
issues and think they're being ungrateful. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
but it's not. It's more
Right.
complicated than
It's
that.
complicated.
It's not a here's all these things, therefore I am happy.
Hmm.
It just doesn't, the human brain just doesn't work that way
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah. No. Well said.
So I don't know. I really thought that was great. And I think a lot of women, particularly, can definitely relate to that. I mean, like, I have all these blessings, but I'm just not happy. And I
Hmm.
remember actually when I saw this, we should probably say when it came out. This came out in 2014, and when I saw it, I was still going through some challenges with my some things in my family and in my life, and I had a panic attack. And once you have one, you're way more likely to have a second panic attack. And so I think I particularly bonded with this movie because of just the way that it was like, okay, someone gets it.
Yeah.
Someone understands.
Yeah. And
You know?
the way she communicates it is so unique and so refreshing, because it's like, I, I I don't think I've had a panic attack.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I've had a partial one or something, or I'm not 100% sure, Rachel, but I felt like watching it that, it was almost like it created more sympathy in me, because I could sense, oh wow, that's what it must feel like, and
Yeah.
how devastating and how difficult,
Yeah. That's
and
what's so moving about the film is that it
yeah,
really creates empathy.
yes,
Yeah.
there's that
I agree. And
there's
whether
that
you've experienced it or not, it just gives you a feeling of empathy.
yeah, absolutely. There's that image near the end with that rolling ball with the spikes,
Uh-huh.
and she's pushing it uphill, trying to get it away from her,
Mm-hmm.
and just think, yeah, that's got to be how it feels. And it's one thing, again, the beauty of this film is, I think, is because there's one thing just to say it or to read, read about it, or read, diagnosis or what, whatever. But to see a visual representation of it, it really opened up my mind and really, I think, touched my heart.
Yeah. And I just loved that it's just like I said, it's very untidy. That she says that that I love her lesson sort of in the end, that she says that I'm a working artist. This is my work in progress. I have to continue to live to complete it.
Mm-hmm.
And so she doesn't say that things are better. She doesn't say that she doesn't give like really any answers.
No, and no prescription, right? Or
yeah,
you said no. I think it's just
And that her sister says maybe it is good to tell everybody so that they know what's in their genes. It's in the genes. You were designed to be crazy. And I love that.
Yeah, I love that too. You had mentioned when you were reading that quote from Signe, from your interview with her, about her family, forgiving her for doing it. I think it was brave of her to do it. What's your take though on on kind of exposing a really personal thing and putting it in a real public kind of forum?
It's very brave. I really admire her. And I can't even imagine like what it would be like to work on this on a daily basis for years.
Oh, I know.
I can't even
Seriously.
It would be just, I don't know how she survived. I really don't.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it was therapeutic for her or if it was
it's pretty amazing because I think I would just thinking about all these things would just be really hard. But yeah, there's something about the honesty of it that was probably therapeutic in the end. And I just love that her sister, said that maybe you were designed to be crazy. And when I first reviewed it, I said, maybe we just need to let people tell their stories. Like I said, it's not for everyone, but I was moved by it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's true. Maybe that's what we just need. We just need people, instead of hiding these stories in our family, instead of hiding what we're experiencing and what we're feeling because it's embarrassing or whatever. Like, why don't we just let people tell their stories?
Yeah.
And we try to be empathetic, and so I don't know. I think that's really important about this. And I remember when I was going through the hardest time in my life was when I was very unhappy with my work at the time, and I just got to this really weird spot. And I just remember feeling like there was this like dark cloud over my life, and no matter what I did, it wouldn't go away, and I couldn't make it go away.
Mm-hmm.
And I would experience happy things, but I wouldn't feel happy. And there was a side of me that was like, have I lost the ability to feel joy? That's how it felt. And I don't know, I appreciate so much that I think she captures that in this.
Yeah.
That feeling of like, and then you get out of it, you find something, whether it's making a movie or whether it's, and that's probably why her family was able to forgive her in the end, because they know that it was true.
Mm-hmm.
And how can you really be angry forever about something that is true and that is like life-saving really for a person?
Right.
Right. But anyway, yeah, so it's a very unique, very beautiful film. And I like, she does say, I asked her in the interview, she talks about that the different mediums she uses, and I just like, she says, I like using stop motion because it adds dimensionality to the film's look. It's also cinematographic, not just graphic.
Right.
Creating the three-dimensional papier-mâché sets feels like creating a whole world and the specific spaces that the characters inhabit. While shooting the stop motion footage, I can see the characters walking through the classroom or park. I just have to draw them in later. So I don't have to decide the technique. The technique has decided for me. And I think that's kind of true with the whole movie. Is you can tell that it was like that it was, I don't know, that it was sort of the movie needed to be made, and it kind of directed her as opposed to like her manipulating the movie.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because it almost, to me, in some ways, it almost felt like it was improvisational. You know, and even though it's animated and you've got to plan things out and whatnot, but even within the same sequence, you know, it would use these different styles, and I my hope for her that it was just liberating, you know, that she just could do whatever she wanted to do or whatever she thought might be appropriate, because I just don't know how storyboarded it was, you know, and how much she really held herself to any kind of a script, although clearly there was this, you know, narration. But I thought that was one of the many things that was so cool about it. You know, just that kind of unexpected
it did. It's
happening.
Very unexpected as far as the animation, and also it's just so honest, and that's what makes it really refreshing. And I'm really excited for her next movie, this one that I supported.
That you produced on Kickstarter, okay?
Yeah. So My Love Affair with Marriage. I'm sure it'll probably be R-rated, but I'm sure it'll be fairly blunt like this one.
Yeah, pretty adult.
But it's kind of cool. It's actually a musical.
Right.
She wrote over 22 songs that are going to be part of it. So I'm just really curious to see that, because I think the music was actually pretty strong in this.
I thought so too.
Score by Christian Sensini is her name.
I wondered, I've been reading about this new project too. And I think she said that in your interview, that it's a happier film.
Yeah.
I mean, not that it would take much, right? Because I mean, this was a real. But I wouldn't call it a downer. I wouldn't call Rocks and Pockets a downer at all. It was just real life to me, you know, and again, something that was just bluntly, you know, brutally honest. But this new project sounds, very interesting, really, really, you know, unique. And again, I'm expecting, because I totally want to see it. I'm planning to see it. Yeah, I'm expecting kind of that same level of clarity and honesty.
So I think it'll be funnier than this, because there is some funny parts of this, believe it or not. There is some funny imagery and some funny,
I mean,
but it's so anyway, I'm really excited for it. It should be really interesting, and it's just cool to when animation can really feel like art.
Yes. This definitely felt like art, didn't it? And also what's amazing is just not a lot of people worked on it.
Right.
And I was feeling almost overwhelmed by the amount of work that, you know, she put into it herself. Because basically, I mean, she animated the whole thing practically, right? I mean, I think she had some help with some components, but this was her project.
Yeah.
And I just think
it's amazing. I agree.
I mean, clearly it took her years, right? But it talk about a labor of love.
Yeah, I do. I love that that's still a thing that you have, like with I don't know, someone like Don Hertzfeldt, or with Sebastian Laudenbach with the Girl Without Hands this last year. He just did it in his own apartment. Like, it's so cool that can still happen in this day and age.
Well, I mean, isn't even you know, My High School Sinking into the Sea, that was primarily
a one
person you know, movie, really. I mean, or, you know, the one animator and artist.
Yeah. I love it. It's really cool. Yeah, so I mean, really, my only thing I struggle with is the narration, but I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I think if you know what you're getting yourself into. Originally, I'd given it a B just because of the narration, but I think I'd be more like an A now, just because it's really stuck with me. It's really stayed with me.
Yeah.
You know what would be an interesting kind of companion, I think, to watch with this movie is to watch Manchester by the Sea, because I think both movies manage to deal with very tough things, but in a way that, at least to me, I thought that movie, Manchester by the Sea, had great empathy.
Oh, I didn't see
and it was something that you never lost hope.
Yeah.
There was always a thread of hope in all of this, and I think that's what makes this all work is that that it never feels like you're just looking at like the worst of human nature kind of a thing. Like sometimes certain movies that try to tackle some of these topics, you're just like, wow, I feel terrible.
Yeah.
I don't feel that way. So
yeah.
Anyway, well, thanks for talking about it with me.
Oh, thank you.
I'm so glad that you liked it, because it's a risky one, I think, to recommend to people.
Oh, absolutely. No, and I really appreciate the recommendation, Rachel. I really enjoyed watching it, and this had really opened my eyes, and I think in my heart in good ways. So thank you.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. Well, we will be back. Well, let us know if you guys have seen Rocks in My Pockets. Put in the comment section what you thought about it, and also let us know if you have any ideas for obscure animation, what you would like us to do, what you'd like us to talk about. We would love to hear, and thanks for joining me to talk about this.
Thanks, Rachel. Always a pleasure. Thanks again.
So where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter. I'm at Stanford Clark. And I also have a movie blog, which is Movies Past and Present. That's PAST and present.com.
Awesome. I'll have that all in the description section. And you can follow me at Rachel's Reviews on iTunes and YouTube, and at Smiling LDS Girl on social media. And we'll put down Signe's links also into her Kickstarter and stuff like that.
Yes.
If you want to check that out.
Yeah, and she's got a very interesting blog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's awesome. So definitely follow her on social media and stuff, because she's great. Thanks again, and we'll talk to you all next month.